So 2019 is not going to be the year of the compact phone. We basically don't even see these phones really launch anymore. But one phone on here has pretty modern specs and it came out, in 2018, but it's still a pretty compelling option and it's a beast. And that is the Sony Xperia XZ2 Compact. Now, I'm going to explain to you why I picked this up in a minute, but if we take a look at how the smartphones got started, they were definitely smaller with the original iPhone. And then after Timmy took over Apple, the, iPhone SE over here and the iPhone 5S, the iPhone 5 series, which it comes from basically, got a little bit bigger. And as Apple went on, it definitely got even bigger to like an iPhone 6, 6S, iPhone 7, iPhone 8 to a 4.7, which is pretty close in size to the Xperia XZ2 Compact, but the aspect ratio change has allowed phones like this to feel smaller even though they have a bigger display, at least on the display front. Now, I would consider the Google Pixel 3 actually a pretty compact phone because it's very thin, has a 5.5-inch display, but this is still a lot bigger than, say, the compacts of the past. I mean, take a look at the size difference in a Pixel 3 and say an iPhone SE. I think a lot of people still want to see a compact phone come back. Now, in terms of Apple's current lineup, if you want one of the newest iPhones, the most compact you can get is the iPhone 10 or 10s. I mean, you can't really buy the 10 right now unless you get a third party, but the iPhone 10s is the smallest phone. And take a look at how much bigger it has gotten over the past. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. A lot of people do demand larger screens. They do like them for the day-to-day, and that's where the market is at right now. But what I'm trying to say is that we don't really have any compact beasts anymore, and that's why I think that if you're looking for a compact phone, the XZ2 Compact is probably the last beast that is available on the market. Yeah, you can get an SE, but that's getting pretty old now, and maybe Apple will shock us and bring the SE2 this year. But why is the XZ2 Compact a beast? Let me explain why. Okay, so the first reason is that in this small body, which is actually a little bit more narrow on the screen than even a 6S, for example, you can tell right there, you have a Snapdragon 845 CPU. Yes, the 855 is coming this year, but the 845 is no slouch, and we've reached a point now where these processors are so fast that they're not really even taking advantage of, how much processing power they have. This device also gives me an ad, but it also has, what are you doing right there? We also have a 4 GB of RAM on here. Now, the Pixel 3 actually has identical processor and identical RAM here to the Sony Xperia XZ2 Compact. Now, another thing that makes this phone a little beast is that it keeps getting software updates. I bought this phone a few days ago, like a week or so ago, and immediately I started getting a bunch of updates because it was a little bit out of date. This phone is running the latest Android 9. So if I go down here to the software update, you can see right now, it says right there, updated to Android 9. So we're basically on the latest version of Android, and Sony's pretty good about pushing out updates to their Xperia line. Now, another thing I like about this Sony XZ2 Compact is even though it's on Android 9 Pie, it doesn't use this Pixel-like navigation where you swipe side by side. It kind of sticks to the classic Android style of card. In addition, on a small phone like this, those cards probably would have been very small going side to side. Another thing that's awesome about this phone is that even though it's this small and Apple has phones that are this size, it can split screen. Now this comes from, basically Android 9 Pie having that feature. But the fact is if you can do this right here, you can split screen on a phone this tiny. Why can't you do that on an Apple iPhone over here? So I don't want to hear that, it's just more minimal and stuff like that. We need this feature here on iOS. This little baby phone right here, the Sony Xperia XZ2 Compact, can split screen multitask and it's super small. So that's pretty amazing if you ask me. That's a lot of power in your pocket, a lot of multitasking abilities. Now, one thing I will mention is that the back of the Xperia XZ2 is a little bit chunky. So it's definitely not the thinnest phone out there, but it's very small on the front, but definitely a little bit chunky. So something like a 6S or an iPhone 7, iPhone 8 is definitely a thinner phone, much thinner than an Xperia XZ2 Compact. And this makes it feel like a compact, chubby phone. But at the same time, that screen is still very tiny and you're definitely gonna feel like it's a tiny phone. You still have your small one thumb ability here for the Sony Xperia XZ2 Compact. There's no other phone out there that you can basically one thumb that has late and modern specs of 2000 18, for example, going into 19 here. So I really just love that I can do everything with one thumb here on the Xperia XZ2, and it is fast. This phone is not slow by no means. I've had no lag on this device. Yes, the RAM management is not as good as like an 8 gig of RAM phone, for example, but still, it basically has the same performance as an XZ2, XZ3, for example. Now, another thing that's nice about this phone is it's water resistant, IP68. It also has dual speakers. So this phone has a speaker down here and up at the top. One thing that's not so nice about this phone is it kind of has a bland design. It's not the best looking device out there, but it still feels premium. It's got aluminum sides here, and I'm not exactly sure the back material feels very matte. It's just a nice little feel in the hand. There's no notch on this display, so you don't even have to worry about that. It's just a very compact feeling phone with not a lot of compromises, even though it's really small. The camera on this phone has an f2 aperture, so in low light, it's not the best. But one thing I really do like is that it does have a camera shutter key, so you can hold down this and take a photo, for example, just like you would on a real camera. Now, I do find the photos to be quite good here on the Sony Xperia XZ2 Compact. They're not quite the best on a smartphone, but they are definitely passable and at least as good as what I've seen on the SE on the rear, maybe even better sometimes than this phone right here. So if you have an SE and you're willing to try Android, but you wanted something more modern and compact, you're tired of waiting for Apple to update this, you just want a modern compact phone, this might be one for you to look at if you're willing to go to Android. This does have micro SD card expandability as well. So like I say, you're seeing that it just really has a ton of features that you're not going to find on every other phone. It's not a cheap phone by no means. It has all the flagship stuff. So even though this display is very small, it's actually a very strong panel. So if I go over here into settings and I go into display, this one right here has a lot of advanced modes like color gamut and contrast. You could change it between standard, professional, and super vivid. That's a lot like what Samsung does. Surprisingly enough, you can also shrink this display. You can bring it down to even smaller, which is something you don't usually see on small phones. The SE didn't have reachability, for example. So even though this phone is small, you can still bring it down even smaller, which is pretty nice for a phone that's already small. So in the display settings, you also have video enhancement, so videos can look better than ever before. This display also is LCD, so it gets plenty bright in sunlight. It's not OLED technology, but at this size, I don't really care about that. Battery life on this phone, because of the Qualcomm 845, is actually pretty strong for a phone this size. This definitely will get you through a day. It easily gets me through a day. It might even stretch into the next day, but not too much further than that. The buttons are very tactile as well. And overall, I just really like this device because it's unique. It's not like any other phone. It kind of went the opposite direction. Everybody's going to the large phones, and Sony said, we're gonna make one that's tiny. They also got their big phones too. If you wanna take a look at the XZ3, for example, they have that option if you still like big phones. But for those of you who like small phones, this is about your best option right now, I feel. Also has a fingerprint sensor. It doesn't have Face ID or facial unlock or anything like that, so you're just gonna have to live with your fingerprint sensor, but there's nothing wrong with that. That works very well. It's a little bit low, so sometimes you gotta move your hand. I think it would have been better a little bit higher. But I mean, this phone has NFC as well. I mean, it's loaded with the features. A couple things I didn't like about it. It's a little bit thick on the back, like I mentioned. The camera on the front is pretty terrible. It's a 5 megapixel shooter and very soft. So don't buy this phone for front-facing photos. They are not good. This also has 4K video, but it can overheat because this phone is very small, kind of like what Sony's smaller RX100 cameras do. It can overheat if you shoot too long in 4K. Other than that, I mean, this compact phone is a beast. I mean, it feels like a beast. It has a lot of premium feel to it. It's got a nice little heft to it. It's about 168 grams or so. But that front size is small. It's still very pocketable. And I really love the shutter key on here. That just makes it feel like a little camera. And even it has a little 3D touch-like feature right here that you don't even get on the XR. Overall, this could be a daily driver phone if you like small devices, but if you just want a backup phone or a pocketable side phone, these phones are coming way down in the price. You can get these under $400 right now, and they are packing flagship specifications. So I love this little Xperia XZ2 Compact, and it makes me really wish Apple would bring back at least a small option for people who do like compact phones. So what are your thoughts on the Sony Xperia XZ2 Compact? Do you think this is a nice device? It also comes in multiple colors, silver, I think it's got a green, a pink, and as well as this black color. It's just a really nice compact phone that has better specs, I think, than even the SE. The SE was a flagship in a small body, but this reminds me a lot of what this phone did. It's got that similar DNA, it just doesn't have iOS. So this video is not trying to influence anybody to say like compact phones are the best ever, but I think it should be at least an option out there. Kind of like in the car game, how we got big sedans and we got little compact, subcompact cars. It's nice to have that option. If you want to see more about the Sony Xperia XZ2 Compact, let me know. This was just a quick overview talking about the phone just a little bit. I'm still working on it, still taking some photos. That's why I didn't show any in this video. So let me know your take on it if you want to see more. Subscribe if you haven't already. Nick here helping you to master your technology. Be sure to be well and peace.